The relationship between Africa and the West is complex, a history marked by exploitation as much as by aid. Since the era of colonization, Western powers have played a significant, often controversial role in shaping the African political landscape. This involvement has ranged from economic policies to direct military interventions, leaving a legacy of mistrust and instability. The assassination of Patrice Lumumba, the first Prime Minister of the independent Democratic Republic of Congo, stands as a stark reminder of the brutal lengths to which Western powers were willing to go to secure their interests. This essay delves into the sensitive history of Western involvement in Africa, examining the intricate web of political assassinations, economic manipulations, and covert operations that have plagued the continent for decades. It aims to shed light on the motivations behind these actions and their impact on African nations and their leaders. By understanding the past, we can better grasp the present and navigate the future of Africa's relationship with the West. It is crucial to approach this subject with neutrality, relying on verifiable facts and expert analysis. The goal is not to point fingers or assign blame, but to foster a deeper understanding of this complex and often overlooked aspect of global politics. Ultimately, this exploration seeks to encourage dialogue and promote a more equitable and just future for Africa and its people. The assassination of African leaders, often under mysterious circumstances, casts a long shadow over the continent's history. These killings, frequently linked to periods of political upheaval or resource nationalism, raise uncomfortable questions about the role of outside powers. One of the most well-documented cases is the death of Patrice Lumumba in 1961. Lumumba, a staunch advocate for Congolese independence, clashed with Western powers over his vision for the newly independent nation. His pursuit of economic sovereignty, particularly over the country's vast mineral wealth, put him at odds with Belgian mining interests and their Western allies. Declassified documents later revealed the involvement of Belgian agents and American intelligence agencies in Lumumba's overthrow and subsequent assassination. Another significant case is the overthrow and death of Kwame Nkrumah, the first president of Ghana, in 1966. Nkrumah, a proponent of Pan-Africanism and socialist policies, nationalized several key industries, alarming Western powers invested in maintaining their economic dominance. While the exact circumstances surrounding his overthrow remain debated, declassified documents suggest the involvement of Western intelligence agencies in supporting the coup that deposed him. These historical examples highlight a recurring pattern of Western intervention in African politics, often aimed at neutralizing leaders deemed detrimental to their interests. The use of assassinations, coups, and covert operations to influence political outcomes has had devastating consequences for African nations, undermining democracy and hindering sustainable development. The legacy of these actions continues to shape the relationship between Africa and the West, fueling mistrust and hindering cooperation. As we move further into the 21st century, the nature of Western involvement in Africa is evolving. The era of overt colonialism and Cold War proxy conflicts has given way to a more nuanced landscape. Economic interests, particularly in resource extraction and emerging markets, remain a key driver of Western engagement. However, concerns about terrorism, migration, and the growing influence of China have added new dimensions to the relationship. Despite these shifting dynamics, concerns persist about the potential for interference in the political affairs of African nations. The increasing strategic importance of Africa, coupled with the rise of populist and nationalist sentiments globally, raises questions about the future of Western engagement on the continent. Will Western powers continue to view Africa through the lens of self-interest, prioritizing resource extraction and security concerns over the needs of its people? Or will we see a shift towards genuine partnership and collaboration, based on mutual respect and shared prosperity? Section 4. The Global Chessboard. Resources, Power, and the Future of Africa. Africa's vast natural resources, including oil, minerals, and arable land, have long been a source of both promise and peril. While these resources hold the potential to fuel economic development and improve living standards, they have also been the focal point of exploitation and conflict. The competition for access to these resources has often played out along geopolitical lines, with Western powers vying for influence against a backdrop of rising powers like China. The geopolitical significance of Africa is further amplified by its strategic location and growing population. As the world grapples with challenges such as climate change, terrorism, and mass migration, Africa's stability and prosperity are increasingly viewed as intertwined with global security and economic interests. This interconnectedness underscores the need for a more balanced and equitable relationship between Africa and the West, one that prioritizes sustainable development, good governance, and respect for human rights. Section 5. The price of dissent, economic sabotage, and political interference. Beyond direct military intervention, Western powers have often resorted to more subtle forms of pressure to influence political outcomes in Africa. Economic sanctions, debt leverage, and control over international financial institutions have been used to punish governments deemed unfriendly or uncooperative. These policies, while often framed as promoting democracy and good governance, can have devastating consequences for ordinary citizens, hindering economic growth and exacerbating poverty. In addition to economic pressure, Western governments and intelligence agencies have been implicated in supporting opposition groups, manipulating elections, and spreading disinformation to undermine governments seen as a threat to their interests. These covert operations, often conducted under the guise of promoting democracy and human rights, serve to maintain Western influence and control over African political systems. The long-term impact of these actions is a climate of instability, mistrust, and eroded sovereignty, making it challenging for African nations to chart their own course and determine their own destiny. Section 6. Conclusion. Towards a more just and equitable future. The history of Western involvement in Africa is a complex tapestry woven from threads of colonialism, Cold War rivalry, and the pursuit of economic and strategic interests. From the assassination of Patrice Lumumba to the ongoing economic and political machinations in the 21st century, the actions of Western powers have had a profound and often destabilizing impact on the continent. As we look to the future, it is imperative that we acknowledge this troubled past and learn from its mistakes. A more just and equitable future for Africa requires a fundamental shift in the relationship between the continent and the West. This entails moving beyond the paradigm of exploitation and interference towards one based on genuine partnership, mutual respect, and shared prosperity. It demands that Western powers prioritize the needs and aspirations of African people over narrow self-interests. Only through such a transformation can we hope to break the cycle of instability, empower African nations to achieve their full potential, and create a more just and equitable world for all.